Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to draw these 3 daisies in a vase. And we're going to get started first by drawing our vase, and you can choose whatever shape of vase that you want as long as it has a narrow mouth, just because we don't want the flowers to kind of be flopping out. And so you can do a straight vase, a more circular vase. I personally chose a more triangular vase, but you can choose whatever you want. And so go ahead and draw it with a pencil first, and then we will get started with the composition of the flowers. Once you finish sketching out your vase, we're going to draw the pencil guides for where our days are going to be, and we're going to be drawing 3 different daisies from 3 different perspectives. And so this first one is going to be kind of coming out towards us, and so it's going to block part of the vase, and I'm kind of drawing a line where the stem is going to be kind of coming out from the back of the center into the vase. And then this second petal is going to be kind of like a quarter side view, and so we're going to see most of the top of the flower, but we're going to have some foreshortening with the petals. And then our third flower is going to be a little bit more from the side view. With this third flower, because it is more of a side view, we won't be able to see the complete center, so I'm just kind of doing this little rainbow shape because the part of the center closest to us is going to be blocked by the petals, and so I don't want to do the full shape until I have drawn the petals. I'm going to zoom in while I'm drawing the petals and the center so that you guys can see it a little bit better. And here I just erased the edge of that vase so it doesn't interfere with our pencil guides that we have for our flower. This big circle is going to be the edge of the petals, and then that center of course is for the center. And today's pen is one of my favorites. It's the Zebra Sensations brush pen. This is the super fine tip. And so for the center, it's just going to be a whole bunch of squiggles kind of in the C and S shapes, and it's going to be kind of like a smaller circle in the center with a bigger circle along the outside. And this doesn't have to look perfect. You can do a higher concentration where you want there to be a little bit more shadow, but kind of make sure that you can see these 2 lines, or these 2 circles pretty well. Kind of continue adding these C and S shapes until you kind of feel like there's enough definition in the center. And don't overdo it because we don't want it to look like a sunflower center that has a lot of darkness. We want it to look like there's some light and darkness here. Once you finish with the center, we can get started with the petals, making sure that you add a little bit of characteristic at the tips of your daisy petals, so little dips at the ends, or some of them can be more rounded, adding some variety to make it look more realistic. And we're going to add what I like to call guide petals, and those are the ones whose shape you can see all the way. And because a daisy has so many petals, you're going to have quite a few guide petals, so you can kind of go around and add one on each side as you go, and then from there build off the rest, or the ones that are kind of sitting behind them. Because we are seeing this flower from the top view, all of your petals are going to be very similar heights. They don't all have to be absolutely identical, but making sure that they stay fairly uniform in their length, because when we see it from the top view, we're not going to see any foreshortening with these petals. So if you're not sure what foreshortening is, I'm going to confuse you a little bit right now by trying to explain it. So pretty much it's because we're changing the perspective of the flower or an object that we're looking at, we kind of need to draw certain parts shorter and other parts longer to kind of give that illusion that it's kind of extending into space, or there's like multiple dimensions. Anyways, back to the flower at hand. As you're drawing your petals, you can also add little gaps in between petals, because sometimes wind comes and takes parts of the petals away. And so if you add those little gaps, you can actually make your flower look even more realistic, because it is like something you would see in nature. The second flower is a little bit from the side view, so the center is going to look more like an oval than a circle, just because of that foreshortening. And so with this flower, we're going to do those C and S shapes as well, with a higher concentration toward that bottom in order to create higher depth or shadow. As you can tell from the guide that I drew, there's more space on this top part than this bottom part, and that's because of foreshortening. And so the petals farthest from us, or this top part of the circle, are going to be longer, whereas the ones on the bottom side are going to be shorter, just to create that sideways illusion. And so as you can see here, it's probably maybe half the size as compared to those back ones. As you add petals on the side as well, these ones will be kind of turning outwards, and they're also going to get slightly longer as you go around the flower towards the top. On this side view flower, make sure that you add that little extra line along the edge in order to make some folds on the petals. Keep building your petals as you go around the flower, making sure that the ones on that top side are longer and the ones on the bottom side are slightly shorter, and just build it off those guide petals that you drew. And I definitely don't mention this enough in my videos, but I do this with pen so that you guys can see better, but you should be doing yours in pencil so you can easily erase and change the petals if you don't like the way they look. Like I said, I do it in pen just so that you guys can see it better, but if you're actually wanting to do it for like a card or anything like that, do it first in pencil so that you can make sure that your composition comes out right the first time. For our third flower, part of the center is obstructed by the petals that are folding towards us, and so I'm only going to draw the top part of this little rainbow, and I will finish it up once I finish drawing those front petals. And so these petals that I'm going to draw right now, these ones are folding out of the center and towards us, and so whenever you do the detail lines, it should kind of give the illusion that they're folding away from the center and not folding into the center. This side view will also have a little bit of foreshortening, but the side petals are actually going to be the ones that look the longest because you're seeing them completely from the side and you're seeing their full length, whereas the ones in the back, you're only seeing that section that is still visible as the flower folds away from us. I have another video on my channel where I teach you how to draw flowers from different perspectives, where I give you a quick tutorial using actual flowers, and I'm going to link that in the caption so that you guys can go and watch it if you're still unsure of what I'm talking about when I talk about foreshortening and about how the length of the petal changes as it moves, towards us or away from us. Once you finish drawing all the petals on this third flower, you can go ahead and add those little CNS waves to create that darker center, and making sure that you add a higher concentration along the edges of the petals because there would be a shadow being cast by the petals on the center here. Now that the flowers have been drawn, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so that you guys can see me draw the rest of this floral composition. And so here I'm going to work a little bit on the vase, but I'm not going to complete the circle because I don't want to get in the way of that stem that is going to come into the inside of the vase. So I'm just kind of drawing that top lip, and then I'm going to connect all the stems into the vase. Make sure that you add a little bit of curve to your stems because you don't want them to look stick straight, or else they're going to look a little bit unnatural or unrealistic. When positioning your stem, make sure that if you continued the line, it would connect to the very middle of your center because all the stems come out from the center of the flower. So kind of draw that invisible line from the middle of your center all the way through the flower and down into your vase. Honestly, I wish that you guys could see me right now because I am talking with my hands, showing you guys how to draw those curved stems with my hands, but alas, you guys can only hear my voice, but oh well. In this floral composition, we're also going to add leaves, and daisy leaves are a little bit longer with kind of wavy edges. And so for this first leaf, we're going to kind of make it go to the side, making sure that we add curves on both sides. Whereas the second leaf, because it is kind of turning away from us, one side of the leaf is going to look a little bit straight because that is that curve that we can see. We can't actually see the edge because it is folded away from us. And so only one side is going to have that curvy edge. We're going to go ahead and add one more leaf because odd numbers look more pleasing to the eye than even numbers, and so this third leaf is going to be hidden behind this last flower, but if you were to color it, you would have a third leaf to color there. Now that our flowers and stems are done, we can actually complete the vase, and like you did with pencil at the beginning, you chose the shape of your vase and you can go ahead and outline it now. And we're also going to add a few detail lines to the vase to kind of make it look like there's either light shining or to show curvature. My vase lines are pretty minimalistic, but if you feel like adding more, you go ahead and do you. This is just what I felt was right for my vase, especially because this is not my area of expertise when it comes to drawing. Like, I draw flowers, not necessarily vases, but I tried. Now it is time to start on the most time-consuming part of drawing flowers, which is detail lines. And for daisies, they have two very distinct veins or lines in their petals. And so if you draw two longer lines kind of curving up the petal and then add some smaller ones, it will look really realistic because if you look at an actual daisy, you're going to see those two natural vein lines. I want to share some tips for adding details. The biggest tip that I like to share in all of my videos is to make sure that you add variety in the length of your lines. So you don't want those two main lines that you're adding to be the exact same length on every single petal, making them slightly longer, slightly shorter, and then the rest of the lines adding some variety in those lengths, because when they're all the same length, then it's going to look really static. And my second tip is to add curves to the lines that you're adding, because petals are not stiff like a board. They dance and they move and they curve, and so adding that curve in your lines will give that illusion of folding and bending and looking more alive. Take your time as you're adding the detail lines, because this part should be relaxing, it should be fun. And if you feel like adding a ton of detail lines, that's great. If you feel like adding very minimalistic lines, that's great. I know a lot of artists have their own style when it comes to detail lines, and so you just do what feels right with your style. What I'm showing you in this video is what I like to do with my style, but they don't have to look exactly like this. Because my hand is in the way on this flower, I'm going to go ahead and speed through this a little bit, but you go ahead and take your time. Feel free to pause or rewind if you need to. And that reminds me, do people even say rewind anymore? Like, what do you say now when you say go back? Or is it playback on a video? I'm not really sure. Yay, we finally got to our last flower. And so with these detail lines, kind of do the same thing that you've been doing with the other ones, making sure that you have kind of those two main detail lines, adding a variety in the length of your lines, as well as curves in those lines. And one of the reasons why I love drawing with a brush pen is that I can press down a little bit harder and those lines get a little bit thicker. So I like to add slightly thicker lines closer to the center to kind of add kind of that little shadow that you get along the edge at the center. And this is something that you can also recreate if you're using a fine liner pen, or if you just a normal pen, by adding kind of a lot of shorter lines towards the center of the flower. When you're happy with the amount of details that you have added, go ahead and erase your pencil lines so that you guys can see your full creation. I'm also gonna go ahead and add a little bit more detail to my vase and stems here in a minute, but first I'm gonna erase just so that I can make sure that I'm seeing my composition clearly. I'm going to add a little bit of cross hatching on this inside portion of the vase so that it looks shadowed and looks like it's the actual inside, and it separates it from the rest of the vase. And I'm also going to add a few straight lines along my stems, especially where the flower meets the stem or where petals are covering it, so that it looks slightly shadowed. Thank you for joining me on today's tutorial. I hope that you found this video helpful and that your daisies and vase turned out beautifully. Thank you!